Hello everyone and welcome back to our modelled writing videos. So if you've seen our first video, then you know how we're going to structure today. But if you are new here, then welcome. And yes, join us today to think about two task 1 questions. So these are the shorter essays. You have 20 minutes to answer these types of questions, and you're expected to write a minimum of 150 words. So that is what we'll be looking at today. You'll be given some sort of data, either in the form of a chart or a graph or a map or a diagram, and then you'll have a task to report back this information. And we'll do that today. So we'll think about our plan, then we'll do the write-up as if we're in the exam itself. And along the way, I'll be giving top tips on how to get those top band scores, which is what we're after. So if that sounds good to you, maybe you are practicing for task 1, maybe you're not sure where to start or how to approach these types of questions, well, you've come to the right place today. Okay, let's get started then. So the first task we're going to look at is going to be all about bar charts. Now, this S here makes us aware that this is going to be more than one bar chart. So this, you can have one bar chart, you can have more than one, you could have a bar chart in amongst other different types of charts as well. So definitely bar charts are one to be comfortable with and familiar with. I would say they are quite a popular type of chart. Okay, the question. The bar charts below show the percentages of men and women in employment in 3 countries in 2005 and 2015. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. All right, so we have, what are we looking at? Men and women in employment, 3 different countries in these 2 years. So already I'm thinking, the bar charts will probably be based around these years. Okay, so what do we have to do? Well, we're being told to summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features. Not every feature, just the main ones. And make comparisons where relevant. So again, we don't need all the comparisons, just when they are particularly important, striking, interesting, something like this. So you are being marked on how well you can select information. You're being selective here. Now, that's quite a hard skill to hone, because sometimes we just want to talk about everything, and there's so much to talk about. And our natural instinct is just to report back on everything. But actually, task 1, you're being assessed on, okay, can you cherry pick, if you like, certain bits of information? Right, with that being said then, let's have a look at the bar charts themselves. Okay, so we're going to start with the 2005 one up here. And we have on the x-axis, we have the countries: Canada, South Korea, Sweden. Then we have the percentage of people employed, and we have both males in blue and females in orange for their bars. Okay then, and then we have the same axes and variables, just this is in 2015. So that's the difference here. Okay, initial thoughts then. Let's have a think. So we have, it looks like more people in employment in general in 2015. However, men in every country in every year have more of them are in employment. So that's something we could go into in our overview. Alrighty, so groups. You could do well, let's have a think about this. You could do the years. So you could report back on 2005 and then 2015. You could do the countries. Perhaps you can group two of them together. I think for this one, I might do male and female. I might go for the genders, male and female, and talk about what's happening there, and then contrast this with females. And then so we're comparing between genders, but we're also comparing within the groups themselves. So we'll compare years with both genders, and yes, the different percentages there. So let's start with doesn't matter which one, but male and female. And the overview we can think about in general, males in every year and every country had more had a higher number in employment or in work, let's say. Okay, so that's the theme that we're going with. Right, so we've got our groups. We've thought about the data. We're comfortable with that. We've got our overview. I think we can go to our write-up. So we have our question here, and this is to help us today. We've got some really nice words to use to report on the data. So we've got verbs and synonyms for words like decrease, increase, stayed the same. These are all great words. And when you combine them with an adverb, this gives even more information about the kinds of trends that we are witnessing. So this is a really good strategy. Of course, you won't have this in the exam, unfortunately, but you can see the approach we're taking here, and you can, if you want to make your own list while you practice, that's a good way of not memorizing, but just letting these words sink in and feeling a bit more natural using them. Okay, and then of course we've got the graph itself. So how do we start then? Well, the first thing we need to do is a really important skill in IELTS, is to paraphrase this sentence here. That's how we always start. Task 1 and in fact task 2. So the bar charts below show the percentages of men and women in employment in 3 countries in 2005 and 2015. Right, so we don't have to paraphrase every single word because we don't want to lose the meaning, but we can paraphrase as much as we can. So the bar charts display data on men and women, males and females in work in various countries in 2 different years. The bar charts display data on males and females in work in various countries in 2 different years. So the sentence here is quite specific. To paraphrase, we've gone quite vague here, but that's okay. We're using different words, which is the main thing. Lovely. So then what do we need to do? Well, we need to talk about our overview next. So we're going to speak about how men throughout the years and the countries, let's write this down, men throughout the years and every nation had more employment than women. Men throughout the years in every nation had more employment than women. Let's start with a nice phrase like in general. In general. and then we'll change the commas. Men throughout the years in every nation had more employment than women. We could touch upon the fact that in 2015, overall, in 2015, there was more work for everyone. Or more people were in work. Okay, so you're noticing that we're not being specific here. We're just using sweeping statements to introduce the data, really. So in general, men throughout the years in every nation had more employment than women. Overall, in 2015, more people were in work. Okay, and we're using past tense because these years have gone by now. Right, so let's start with men. Okay, so we want to maybe start with 2005 and compare and then go into 2015. So what can we say? Men's percentage was always over 60% in all years and all nations. So the amount of men working in all countries in 2005 and 2015 was consistently over 60%. So we're doing a sort of 2006. No, 2005. We're doing a nice introduction there to start reporting on men's employment. Okay, so let's talk about the lowest then. Maybe this just over 60% in Canada here. The lowest statistic of this gender in work, different ways of saying men in work, was seen in Canada in 2005. And so we have a 10% gap here. That looks about 62%. 62%. So now we need to be careful because we don't want to report on absolutely everything. So let's just talk about Sweden for the 2005. So Sweden saw the largest number for this year. So we're still talking about 2005. 78. That's 78%. Okay, let's compare this to 2015. 2015, on the other hand, Canada and Sweden both had the same number. Canada and Sweden both had the same figure. I like a bracket. We can definitely use a bracket here and there. 70%, whereas the spelling, South Korea, capitals as well for countries, proper nouns. And instead of just repeating ourselves, well, this figure is actually the same in Sweden as Sweden's in 2005, so we can state that. Whereas South Korea witnessed the highest amount of men in work. In fact, the same number as Sweden had in 2005. So we're rephrasing the way that we're just relaying the information. It's nice to sort of say things in slightly different ways. And actually, this was a drop for Sweden on the previous year. So we could say this is a drop by how many? So we had 78 and 70 by 8% in the 10 years, 2005 to 2015. It's for Sweden. Whereas South Korea witnessed the highest amount of men in work, in fact, the same number as Sweden had in 2005. All right, so maybe we can actually, looking back now, we could say, we compare this to women. So all men were over 60%. We can say significantly higher than women. Okay, let's read this back and see how it sounds. The amount of men working in all countries in 2005 and 2015 was consistently over 60%, significantly higher than women, so we're comparing there. The lowest statistic of this gender in work was seen in Canada in 2005, 62%. Just checking the figures here. Yes. Okay, Sweden saw the largest number for this year at 78%. In 2015, on the other hand, Canada and Sweden both had the same figure, 70%. This is a drop by 8% in the 10 years for Sweden. Or this is, we're checking our tenses, this was, past tense. Whereas South Korea witnessed the highest amount of men in work. In fact, the same, let's put in 2015. In fact, the same number as Sweden had in 2005. So we've already stated that figure, 78%. So we're not repeating ourselves, we're just saying things in different ways, which is quite nice. Alrighty, so let's go to talk about women then. And we're comparing this between the years and genders and countries. So there's a lot to sort of think about here. But remember, we don't have to report on everything. That's the whole point of this. So we can just pick the most important parts. Okay, so let's maybe talk about 2005 first. And they were, well, all women for all years were under 60%. So maybe we can open that and contrast. However, women for all years and nations had a number lower than 60%. So sometimes it's quite nice to make statements like that and group them together. And let's be really clear, unlike men, women for all years and nations had a number lower than 60%. Okay, let's dive into 2005. In 2005, we could talk about South Korea having the lowest. South Korea had the lowest percentage at 30%. Canada had about 38%. Sweden had about 45%. Sweden was indeed the highest. Indeed had the most women working. Sometimes it's nice to phrase the percentage in the way that what it actually means, you know, what are we talking about here? had the most women working at 45%. Okay, let's go into 2015 then. So what happens here? South Korea is still the lowest. However, Canada surpasses Sweden to become the highest. In 2015, South Korea is still, or was, sorry, was still holding the smallest number. And let's use a bracket. 35%. 35%. Although Canada in this year surpassed Sweden to reach the largest figure. And let's do all Canada for women, 55%. 55%. This was actually the highest amount of women in work in all years. This was the highest percentage seen for throughout the data for women, for females. Okay, let's read this back and see how it's sounding. However, unlike men, women for all years and nations had a number lower than 60%. In 2005, South Korea had the lowest percentage. Percentage lower, had the smallest percentage at 30%. Sweden was indeed Sweden had the most women working at 45%. In 2015, South Korea was still holding the smallest number. The least Korea was still holding the smallest share, or maybe we could say South Korea was still behind in numbers, behind in statistical numbers than the other nations. Although Canada in this year surpassed Sweden to reach the largest figure, 55%, this was the highest percentage seen throughout the data for females. Okay, so you can see that we've gone back and edited, made sure things sound okay, checked the tense, checked our spelling, really important things when it comes to this task. All right, so let's find out how many words we have. All right, so that's led us to 199 words, which is over, of course, the 150 minimum. But like we talked about, there's no upper limit here, so you could, in theory, write this much. But at the very least, you've seen the structure, so you can follow this and then, adapt it to how you like. But as long as you have paraphrase and then an overview and then your two groups, that's a really important part. And then you can pick your own examples, elaborating on different points perhaps that you think are important. Okay, with that being said, then let's go into our next task, which is going to focus on a table. Now, tables can seem intimidating, they are a bit daunting for students, I think. So, we'll look at one today and really I'll show you how you can approach it like you would any other chart or graph, and how we can still, of course, do our groups and structure it exactly the same way as we would any other task one. So let's dive into the question. The table below gives information about the underground railway systems in 6 cities. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, so we're doing exactly the same thing. We're selecting and reporting on the main features, and we're just making comparisons where we think they are important. Okay, so what's the table about? Underground railway systems in 6 cities. Ooh, let's have a look. Oh, here we go. Okay, so the 6 cities are on the left here: London, Paris, Tokyo, Washington, D.C., Kyoto, and Los Angeles. Then we have the date opened here from 1863 to 2001. Kilometers of route, so how long they are. And then passengers per year in the millions. Right, so initial thoughts then. Wow, Tokyo is definitely the most used, followed by Paris. Um, However, London is the biggest. So interesting. Kyoto's the smallest, 11 kilometers. Um, right. Okay, so you can see that actually this is displayed as a table, but we're looking at information which could be displayed in different other visual ways as well. So we'll approach it exactly the same. It's just less visual. It's more based around numbers, this type of style, but that's okay. We can still do our groups and our overview as we would normally. Okay then, so let's think about our overview first. Sometimes I like to do that first just to give us a general idea of what we're focusing on. So we could talk about Tokyo having the most passengers. And Paris, actually followed by Paris. Even though they were built a long time ago. So both being built before, we could say 1930. Tokyo has, and we're looking at, this doesn't have a year, so we're going to use present tense. Tokyo has the most passengers, closely followed by Paris. So perhaps then we could do our groups based on passengers. So we could go Tokyo, Paris, and then London. And this just happens to be the first 3 years as well, which have the first three, which have the biggest passengers. And then we have Washington, D.C., Kyoto, and LA for short. There we go. Okay then, so that was quite a good technique to do the overview first, and then we actually, through doing the overview, we decide what groups would be the best route to go down for this one. Right, so we've got our groups, we've got our overview. Now we can go into the write-up. So we've got our question, and we can use some words from here. So I've kept it on here to describe certain patterns, maybe not as much as say in a bar chart situation or a line graph, but these are definitely useful to describe certain statistics, and of course our table. So just like with every task 1 and every task 2, we need to paraphrase this sentence here, the first one. The table below gives information about the underground railway systems in 6 cities. The data shown provides information, provides figures and statistics about metro systems or metros, or that's another way of saying undergrounds, in several different, maybe not capital cities, large cities. The data shown provides figures and statistics about metros in several different large cities. Okay, so we don't need to paraphrase every word. We just need to give a general paraphrase as much as we can. Alrighty then, our overview. So, Paris and, let's say in general, or on the whole, Paris and Tokyo, despite being built, actually, that were both constructed before 1930, has the most passengers per year compared with the other places. On the whole, Paris and Tokyo that were both constructed before 1930 have the most passengers per year compared with the other places. Okay, so we're not being specific here. That's for our groups, which we're going to go into now. So let's group these together. They have the most passengers. The most the total passengers or users for London, Paris, and Tokyo maybe are far greater than the other 3 cities. There we go. The total users for London, Paris, and Tokyo are far greater than the other 3 cities. London, the capital of the United Kingdom, was first opened in 1863 and is in fact the longest or in fact covers the largest area at 394 kilometers. Capital of the United Kingdom was first opened in 1863 and is in fact covers the largest area of any subway at 394 kilometers. Okay, then we go into our we don't have to say everything about uh, about London, so maybe we could go into Paris and Tokyo. Um, so let's maybe talk about Paris. Paris, which was which the public first used, or we could say the difference maybe 37 years after London, just a different way of demonstrating the data. Has 191 million passengers per year. However, Tokyo being built 27 years later has nearly 2,000 million individuals relying on it. And let's do a bracket. 1,927 million. Maybe we could say to be precise. Okay, so we're comparing a few different things here. So the total users for London, Paris, and Tokyo systems are far greater than the other three cities. The capital of the United Kingdom was first opened in 1863 and in fact covers the largest area of any subway at 394 kilometers. Paris, which the public first used 37 years after London, has 1,191 million passengers per year. Let's do a full stop here, make this a bit smoother. However, Tokyo, being built 27 years later, has nearly 2,000 million individuals relying on it. 1,927 million to be precise. All right, so that is our first group there. Let's go into our next group. The other three cities, we could say two of which located in America. We could say, oh, what's the total? Not more than 250 million combined. Do not exceed 250 million users combined. Dramatically fewer than the other group, than the first three. So we're comparing between groups, and now we're going to go into detail. Okay, so we have the oldest out of this grouping is Washington, DC. Open to use in 1976. And it's quite large as well, 126 kilometers. And it is also the longest route for these three cities. 126 kilometers. And it's actually got the most users as well. Kyoto and Los Angeles. Kyoto and Los Angeles have a combined total of 95 million passengers, or um, million people every year. Still less than Washington DC's 144 million. Okay, let's read this back and see how it sounds. The other three cities, two of which located in America, let's remove that actually, do not exceed 250 million users combined, dramatically fewer than the first three, or maybe than the other group. The oldest out of this grouping is Washington, D.C., open to use in 1976, and it is also the longest route for these three cities, 126 kilometers. Kyoto and Los Angeles have a combined total of 95 million people every year, still less than Washington, D.C.'s 144 million. Okay, so we've selected various information here. We've not done everything. We've compared, we've contrasted. Let's see how many words this comes to. All right, so this has come to a total of 179 words, so just over the 150. And as you can see, we've structured it the same as we would any other task one. So we've managed to do groupings. We've not talked about everything in the table, but we've selected the most relevant information that we wanted to include. So hopefully that's been useful for you today. We've had bar charts and we've had a table. So really good to be familiar with both of those. Let us know if you've got any questions or comments. We love to hear from you, and we'll see you next time.